A scorching Memphis evening in 1971. Sidewalks shimmer under neon signs, the air thick with the scent of barbecue and sweat. A barefoot boy named Jimmy races past parked Cadillacs, heart hammering. Clutched in his small fist is a worn leather wallet, its edges frayed, its contents a mystery he can't yet unravel. Inside, he discovers crisp bills that could feed his family for weeks, a heavy gold token stamped EAP, a faded photograph of a smiling little girl, and, most astonishingly, a signature scrawled in blue ink. Elvis Presley. Jimmy's lungs burn, his toes blister on the hot pavement, but he pauses only long enough to press the wallet to his chest. He has no idea that this lost treasure belongs to music's greatest icon, and that returning it will set in motion a chain of kindness neither of them could ever have expected. The late afternoon sun pressed down on Memphis as Jimmy Matthews ambled along the cracked sidewalks, his bare feet scuffing against the hot concrete. He was 10 years old, wiry and quick, with a shock of unruly dark hair and eyes that had learned too early how to watch the world. His mother worked endless hours, 2 jobs on some days, to pay the hospital bills for his ailing grandmother. Jimmy scraped together coins by collecting discarded soda bottles, racing the trash collectors each morning, and delivering what he could to the redemption center. It was not an easy life, but it was theirs, and Jimmy bore it with a dogged determination. That afternoon, though, something unexpected happened. A glossy black Cadillac Eldorado roared past the old Sun Record studio, tires spraying up dust on the side street. As the driver gunned the engine around the corner, a small brown leather wallet slid from the passenger's seat and tumbled onto the pavement. Jimmy, walking the opposite way, heard the soft clatter and paused. His curiosity outstripped his caution. He knelt and flipped the wallet open. Inside lay a neat stack of bills, more money at once than Jimmy had ever seen, and a heavy gold token engraved with the initials EAP tucked beneath the bills was a small photograph, a candid snapshot of a wide-eyed little girl in a frilly dress, grinning up at the camera. On the back, in elegant looping script, was an autograph reading, "To Lisa Marie, love Elvis Presley." Jimmy's heart hammered. Elvis Presley's name was whispered with reverence on every street corner across Tennessee, from Beale Street buskers to minivan radios blasting his latest hit. He had never glimpsed the superstar in person, but he had seen his posters plastered on walls and heard his songs on crackling transistor radios. Now this wallet, this golden token, this photograph, all belonging to the king, was in Jimmy's hands. For a long moment, Jimmy hesitated. He wondered if he could keep it, if this windfall might change everything for his family. He imagined his grandmother's delight when he brought home that stack of bills. But as he lifted his gaze toward the bright blue sky, a stronger impulse took hold. This treasure did not belong to him. Gathering his courage, Jimmy slipped the wallet into his threadbare backpack and set off toward Graceland, 10 miles away. His small legs carried him at a jog, stopping only to ask directions from a church custodian and duck under a billboard featuring Elvis's unmistakable silhouette. Every few blocks he paused to double-check the precious cargo. The leather edges, the token's weight, the autograph's flourish. By the time twilight began to tint the horizon, Jimmy found himself standing before the great iron gates of that storied estate. The towering pillars etched with Graceland felt both intimidating and sacred. He swallowed a lump in his throat and stepped forward, the worn straps of his backpack digging into his shoulders. Behind him, the velvet dusk settled in, as if the world held its breath. Jimmy Matthews, barefoot and wide-eyed, clutched the wallet as though it were a living thing. He knew he carried someone else's fortune, and perhaps in returning it, he might spark a kindness in another heart. With the token of EAP nestled inside his palm, he lifted his chin, squared his shoulders, and pressed the buzzer at the guardhouse. The distant hum of rehearsals drifted through the gates, but Jimmy's own heartbeat was the loudest sound he could hear. In that moment, Memphis seemed to hold its breath with him. Jimmy's small hand trembled as the iron gate swung open, admitting him into the quiet grandeur of Graceland's grounds. He stood for a moment on the gravel drive, gazing up at the white-columned mansion, its lights glowing warmly against the darkening sky. Somewhere inside, music echoed. A distant chord progression, the low hum of a band tuning their instruments. Every step Jimmy took felt laden with significance. Here, within these walls, his journey would find its reckoning. A uniformed chauffeur guided him through manicured gardens and under magnolia trees heavy with dew to a side entrance marked private. The driver's face was polite but guarded. He did not recognize the ragged 10-year-old clutching a worn backpack. Jimmy held out the leather wallet wordlessly, as if offering a sacred relic. The chauffeur's eyes widened at the initials gleaming on the gold token, but he said nothing until he led Jimmy through a narrow hallway into an intimate, lamp-lit room. Elvis Presley stood before him, stripped of stage finery and vamped-up persona, dressed in a simple white polo and dark slacks. His signature sunglasses rested on a mahogany side table, and a strand of chestnut hair curled at his temple. He looked up from straightening a stack of sheet music, and the world seemed to still for Jimmy's racing heart. The king of rock and roll met the boy's gaze with a gentle curiosity, as though seeing him not as an intruder, but as someone the universe had guided to this moment. Jimmy swallowed hard. "Sir," he whispered, voice cracking with urgency, "I found this outside your studio." He held out the wallet, the edges frayed, the leather scuffed. "I thought you'd want it back." Elvis's expression softened. He approached with measured steps, careful not to startle. From his own pocket, he retrieved the small photograph of Lisa Marie that Jimmy had seen. "This belongs to my daughter," Elvis said, voice low, almost intimate. He took the picture and the gold token into his large hand, fingers brushing the engraved initials, tracing them with an unhurried reverence. Jimmy watched, transfixed, as the guilt and wonder in his own chest warred for dominance. He wanted to say he was hungry, that his grandmother lay coughing upstairs in a hospital bed 2 counties away. He wanted to ask for a few bills to buy his mother new shoes. But as Elvis gazed at the items in his hand, something inside Jimmy shifted. He remembered the photograph's tender smile, the promise of the token, the glory of the name scrawled in bold cursive. Instead, he whispered, Could you record a message for my mother? She listens to your songs every night on the radio. She's alone, taking care of my grandma. She thinks the music helps her remember better days. I want her to know you care." The room grew hushed. Elvis looked at Jimmy with a tenderness reserved for lost souls and gentle hearts. He knelt to meet Jimmy's eye level. "What's her name, son?" "Evelyn Matthews," Jimmy answered, voice thick. "And my grandma, she's so sick." Elvis nodded slowly. "Tell her this, Jimmy." He took a small reel-to-reel tape recorder from a side table. With deliberate calm, he spoke into the microphone. "Miss Evelyn Matthews, this is Elvis Presley. I want you to know how brave you are, looking after your family. I hear your prayers every night on that radio. Your son is a remarkable boy, and I'm honored he brought this back to me. Stay strong, ma'am, because we need people like you in this world. God bless you." As the final words faded, Elvis pressed a button and the tape rewound. He offered it to Jimmy. "Take this to your mother." Jimmy's eyes shimmered. He accepted the recorder, feeling its weight both physical and spiritual. "Thank you, sir," he managed, voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you." Elvis rose, brushing at the sleeve of his polo, as if dusting off a memory. He touched Jimmy lightly on the shoulder. "Keep this wallet safe, partner. And remember, kindness doesn't need a stage." Jimmy nodded, tears welling in his eyes, not tears of pity, but of profound understanding. He had set out to do a simple act of honesty, and found himself part of something far greater. A moment of genuine connection, unmediated by fame or fortune. As Jimmy turned to leave, Elvis called softly, "And Jimmy, you stick to that goodness you've got. It'll carry you places money never could." Jimmy ran to the door, heart pounding with a new sense of purpose. Outside, the world had not changed, but Jimmy had. Clutching the tape recorder and the returned wallet, he hurried into the night, determined to bring hope home to his mother and grandmother. Behind him, in the quiet halls of Graceland, Elvis watched the boy's receding form, a silent acknowledgement in his gaze that sometimes the smallest act of integrity can echo farther than any anthem. When midnight's hush fell over Graceland, Elvis rose from his writing desk and summoned his driver, Thompson, to the car waiting beyond the wrought iron gates. Without preamble, he instructed the chauffeur to take them to Old Highway 51, where he had been told the Matthews family lived in a narrow, weathered house topped by peeling white paint and a sagging porch roof. Elvis spoke quietly all the way, eyes on the rearview mirror, a mixture of purpose and humility on his face. By the time they arrived, Jimmy's mother, Evelyn Matthews, was closing her eyes in a rocking chair as her youngest daughter, Clara, leaned against her lap. The front porch light sputtered, casting long shadows across the cracked wood floor. Evelyn stirred at the sound of the engine idling nearby, fear flickering in her eyes as she reached for the old hunting rifle that she kept propped beside the door. Elvis stepped forward, removing his sunglasses to reveal tired but compassionate eyes. "Mrs. Matthews," he said, voice low and measured. "My name is, well, I'm a friend of Jimmy's." He produced a small brown paper bag from his jacket and held it out. "I brought groceries, and something more." Evelyn's hand trembled as she lowered the rifle and accepted the bag. She recognized the distinctive handwriting on the lunch sack's label. "Groceries for Evelyn and family, E.P." Inside the bag were fresh vegetables, eggs, a loaf of bread still warm from the bakery, and 2 cans of sardines. Beneath them lay a battered portable television, the kind Jimmy had dreamed of and saved for. Evelyn's lips curled into a stunned smile as she pulled out the set, its screen cracked, but its promise intact. "I heard you've been working overtime at the hospital," Elvis said gently, "caring for your mother and Jimmy. Thought you might like to rest your feet for a change." Evelyn closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. I don't know what to say." Elvis motioned to Jimmy on the porch steps, brushing dirt from his jeans. Clara peeked around her mother's skirt, wide-eyed. "Come join us inside," Elvis invited. "I'd like to have dinner with you, if you don't mind." That invitation alone felt like a benediction. Inside, the Matthews home was neat but sparse. A single lamp lit a small kitchen table surrounded by mismatched chairs. Elvis sat at the head, Jimmy beside him, Evelyn across. Clara clutched a doll, peering shyly. Elvis reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. The Islanders' Cafe menu. "I know it's late, and this kitchen's your domain," he said, "but I thought we could use a change of pace." He unfolded the menu: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, collard greens, sweet tea. Evelyn gasped at the price, far beyond their means, but Elvis simply nodded. Consider it on me." As the meal arrived, Jimmy buttered his bread with reverence. Clara tested the tea, convinced it was magic. Elvis watched them eat, listening to the easy chatter between mother and children. He picked up his fork and quietly tucked into the food, praising his cook between bites. "This is some mighty fine chicken, ma'am," he said with a grin. Evelyn beamed, brushing stray hairs from her face. After dinner, Elvis admired the battered guitar resting against a corner chair. "Jimmy, I heard you learn chords on this." He strummed a gentle A minor, the notes trembling on the warm air. "Can you show me what you've got?" Jimmy's fingers trembled at first on the frets, but under Elvis's encouraging gaze, he played a few simple chords. Elvis nodded, tapping his foot to keep time. "You've got talent, son. Remember that." Evelyn dabbed her eyes with a napkin. "He's always teaching himself. No lessons, just ear training from your records." Elvis paused, closing his eyes. In that moment, he saw echoes of his own youth. A struggling family, a borrowed guitar, the fierce determination to sing despite every obstacle. He leaned forward, placing his hand gently on Jimmy's. "I want you to keep playing," he said softly. "But keep your heart open wider than these strings." Before leaving, Elvis retrieved a small case from Thompson's hands. A well-worn acoustic guitar etched on the bridge with the initials TM and a simple inscription, "Trust Music, EP." He handed it to Jimmy, who gasped. "This is yours now. Learn every chord, every story hidden in those 4 strings." Jimmy's eyes shone as he cradled the gift. Elvis stood, brushing flour from his hands. "Take care of each other," he said to Evelyn, offering her a respectful nod. "And I'll be around if you ever need a friend." As the Cadillac's tail lights faded down the dusty lane, Evelyn gathered her children on the porch steps. Jimmy's new guitar rested between them, a bridge between past hardships and future dreams. Clara hugged her mother's legs, and Evelyn whispered a prayer of gratitude for the stranger who had become family. Inside Graceland, Elvis removed his jacket and hung it neatly. He placed the phone on the desk and settled into a chair, a quiet contentment in his gaze. Tonight, music had changed more than one life. It had woven new threads of hope between 2 very different homes under the same Tennessee sky. A week after his visit to the Matthews household, Elvis took the stage at the Mid-South Coliseum in Memphis. The arena thrummed with anticipation. 18,000 expectant faces, floodlit instruments, and a hush that fell like velvet when a lone spotlight found him. He had promised the Matthews family, especially young Jimmy, that he would share their story. Tonight, the promise would be fulfilled. The band launched into a slow introductory groove. Piano, bass, brushes on snare. Elvis stood at the microphone, the white rhinestone cape of his stage costume glinting under the glare. He paused at the lip of the stage, his silhouette framed by the thousands of expectant souls before him. For a moment, he simply breathed, letting the silence stretch, an intimate moment in a mammoth hall. "I want to tell you about someone I met just this past week," Elvis began, voice low but carrying to the farthest balcony. "A 10-year-old boy named Jimmy, who found himself holding a wallet that wasn't his. In that wallet was a token with my initials, and a photograph of my little girl, Lisa Marie. He didn't ask for money. He wanted only to return what he'd found, and to make sure the person who lost it was okay." A ripple of recognition coursed through the audience. This was no off-the-cuff anecdote, but a personal confession. The band dropped to a whisper behind him as Elvis continued. "I followed him home, met his mother, and listened to their story. They've known hunger, fear, and loss, much like I did when I was a boy. And so tonight, I ask you, can we open our hearts to each other as easily as we open our wallets. The applause that followed was tentative at first, uncertain whether to intrude on a sacred moment, but soon swelled into a roar of approval. Elvis let the sound wash over him before signaling to his guitarist. The opening chords of If I Can Dream rang out, but this time with a new purpose, to honor Jimmy and his family. Halfway through the first verse, the stage lights dimmed outside the circle of illumination around Elvis and his band. A single spotlight tracked a small figure emerging at the edge of the stage. Jimmy, clutching his trusted guitar, eyes wide. Behind him, his mother and Clara stood just off stage, fear mingled with pride on their faces. Security guards paused, unsure, but Elvis stepped aside, his cape sweeping the floor, inviting the boy forward. Jimmy's bare feet tapped the wooden riser as he climbed the few steps to join Elvis. The audience gasped, then fell utterly silent. Elvis dropped his guitar strap over Jimmy's shoulder and leaned close so the child could hear through his mic. "Play with all your heart, son." Jimmy nodded, a mix of terror and exhilaration in his eyes. Together, their voices, Jimmy's tentative, Elvis's steady, wove through the melody. In that moment, the banner above the stage seemed to fade away. There was no superstar, no fan, no celebrity, only two human beings sharing a song that spoke of hope, unity, and the possibility of healing. When the last note held and the final chord faded, the Colosseum erupted. But this was not the usual frenzy for a #1 hit. It was something deeper, a collective exhalation, a recognition that kindness, like music, resonates beyond the immediate moment. Backstage, the Matthews family huddled close. Jimmy's eyes shone with tears unashamed. His mother pressed his hand to her cheek. Clara gripped her mother's skirt, overwhelmed by the turn of events. For them, it was nothing short of a miracle. Before Elvis changed for the encore, he slipped off his glove, unraveling the fragile cufflinks beneath, and left them on Jimmy's guitar case. The small silver initials, EP, glinted under the dressing room light, a silent message that this night would linger in their lives forever. Outside the arena, dawn had already begun to pinken the Memphis sky. As Elvis climbed into his Cadillac, Clara's gentle voice drifted through the car's window. "Thank you, Mr. Presley." He looked back, offering a small nod and the promise of "Anytime, darlin'." The driver eased away, leaving behind a memory seared into the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. Decades later, Jimmy Matthews would stand on this very stage as a grown man, guitar in hand, performing the same song he first sang with Elvis. And in the front row, a woman with silver hair and a proud smile, Evelyn Matthews, would wave, knowing that a single act of integrity and compassion had rippled outward to change countless lives. Because on that Memphis night in 1972, two souls, one born into hardship, one born into stardom, met in a shared moment of music and mercy. And the world, if only for a heartbeat, listened differently.